Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Northern Virginia Baha'i Center Sunday morning program. We hope everyone enjoyed their extra hour this weekend. Please note that the program is being recorded and will be made available on the Nova Baha'i Center website and on YouTube. At this time, we'd like to remind everyone that you've been muted to reduce feedback. However, we invite you to enable your camera so that the speaker can see you. You can enable your camera by moving your mouse to the lower part of your screen and clicking on the video camera icon. We'd also like to remind you that public messages in the chat box will be visible on the recording. We will begin at this time with prayers and devotions.
O Son of Being, with the hands of power I made thee, and with the fingers of strength I created thee, and within thee have I placed the essence of my light, the essence of my light. Be thou content, be thou content with it, and seek naught else. For my work is perfect, and my command is binding. Question it not, nor have a doubt thereof. Question it not, nor have a doubt thereof. O Son of Being, with the hands of power I made thee, and with the fingers of strength I created thee, and within thee have I placed the essence of my light, the essence of my light. Be thou content, be thou content with it, and seek naught else. For my work is perfect, and my command is binding. Question it not, nor have a doubt thereof. Question it not, nor have a doubt thereof.
Let your joy be the joy born of my most great name, a name that bringeth rapture to the heart, and filleth with ecstasy the minds of all joy, be the joy born of my most great name, a name that bringeth rapture to the hearts, and filleth with ecstasy the minds of all who have drawn nigh unto God, unto God. And filleth with ecstasy the minds of all who have drawn nigh unto God, unto God.
Our speaker today is Frederick Landry. He was born biracial into a mixed race family and brings his personal experiences of being adopted into and growing up in a white and then biracial family in Tennessee. Please welcome Frederick Landry.
Hi, everyone. Guess everybody's on mute but me. Well, good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here. So many wonderful faces here. Again, like was mentioned, if you all do want to share your screen, it'd be great to see everybody here. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so as was said, you know, I feel like you know, a moment to talk about the title here, the struggle to find racial identity. You know, I think that this idea of racial identity is it's a very important one, and I can say that I don't have any particular training in racial identity or whatnot, but I do have experience over 40 years, and when I think that I understand race and race identity and how it plays and interplays with my life, I then find that there's a new learning the next month, the next year. This year, I'd say, is one of the ones where I've found a lot of learning with how race, how it relates to my identity, and I'm sure everybody here has, you know, has a different but related understanding. The slideshow that I have today, as you'll see, it gets very personal. So hopefully everybody's okay with that, with us. It's personal to me, but I felt like that was the best way to explain the struggle that I've found myself going through over the last 40 plus years of how to understand race and how race identity fits with me. And you can see here, these are two pictures. This is who I would really consider my family. On the picture on the left is my family growing up. My father, my sister, mom, my younger sister, and myself. that was our family. And as you can see, um, we're not all the same color. We don't all look alike. Um, the two children on the right, myself and my younger sister, we were both adopted. And my older sister, Melissa, in the middle of my parents there, she was a natural birth child from them. And then the one on the bottom here, this is my family. My wife, Cassie, is there next to me, and then my son, Miles, and my daughter, Zoe. So, I went from one interracial family to another. And in many ways, there's some experience that I have navigating the I'd say the benefits and the challenges of being in a biracial family, and I've brought those to my new family. But also, there's new challenges and new dynamics that I'm learning and figuring out, and our whole family is. So, and I'm sure we will learn probably more so, in the coming years than we've experienced so far. So, I grew up thinking, is racial identity important for a minority? Um, I have lived a significant portion of my life feeling like the answer is no. Um, I feel like the teachings of the Baha'i faith and the fact that we are all one, in theory, it essentially equated or meant like it gave me like a license or rather a mandate to reject any notion of belonging to a particular race or grouping. So growing up, it wasn't important for me to identify as any race. And I honestly I really didn't identify with any race. I wasn't black, I wasn't white. I was just me. I was a human being. And I felt like that was enough. And I felt like it, it was going to serve me best and mankind best to shed those labels. That's what I believed. Um, it took a while to realize that for a variety of reasons that wasn't true. But um, I did believe that we didn't need to have races. We didn't need to have, I didn't need to be fit into a certain box. I'm black, therefore I do this, or I'm white, or I'm biracial, therefore I listen to this music, or I watch these types of movies, or have these types of friends. I really believe that if you looked at my life growing up, you would have no idea um, what my skin color was. So we'll look at that a little bit more here. As was said, I was, like I said, I was adopted. Rosalie and David Landry in that picture on the left, they adopted me. But my birth parents, you can see here, this is my birth mother, Risa, on the left. And my birth father is on the picture on the right, on the further to the left. So these are my birth parents. I was born in 1977. And a little bit about me, I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana. And my birth parents, they were married when I was born. And they had actually met in a drug rehabilitation center. My mother was, as you can see here, white, and my father was black. And we all lived in the Ninth Ward of New Orleans, which is a very dangerous, especially back then, neighborhood. And I have since been to New Orleans in the Ninth Ward, and I am still very cautious just being around that environment. But my father was a barber, and I don't know much about their life, but I do know that through the continued use of drugs, alcohol, domestic abuse, and then racism, it was very difficult for them to continue to provide a family unit for me. The racism really came on the part of her family. They really had wanted nothing to do with a black child. And of course, obviously, having a black son-in-law probably didn't help. So in 1980, I was actually taken to Florida by my mother. She took me without my father's consent. decided to give me up for adoption. Everybody was kind of on board except for my father, through lots of threats, and there was lots of issues with the family. But it was finally done that I was going to be adopted. So I was put into a home where I was going to be, taken care of until I was adopted. So this is my story so far, at least as what I know. So I'm sharing this with you all here. I'm sharing it because I think it's interesting. Like, this is what my now parents were given. So, they were given something to say, like, this is what you got. If you're interested in this child, then then this is what you'll get. I think the most important part for me, and I think that they saw that in themselves, is that last paragraph. Looking for a family who's flexible, who would be willing to help Frederick through his transition from one home to another. That I need stability and a chance to grow roots with loving parents. And I know that they are this, and they self-identified with this and said, we can do this. We can choose this child who I actually just had turned 4. So they signed up. They saw a few pictures of me. I know this was one of the few pictures that I have of myself. I don't have many pictures. I have no baby pictures, but this is the summer of 1981, one of the earliest pictures I have. And you can see the gentleman over there on the right. His name's Terry. He was one of my foster parents. And you can see all my friends there. And as we start going through this, I think looking at everyone there in these pictures and whatnot, maybe just pay close attention to what you see around you. Here, what I see is lots of white people and one little black boy. So I put this picture in there. This was Halloween. I guess that's very timely. Halloween of 1981. I don't know if anybody knows who this is. Anybody? I see my mother-in-law talking there. Well, this is Mork from the show Mork and Mindy. And I put it here because I thought it was interesting. I would say that it's likely, had I grown up in a Black family or been in a Black foster care, they probably wouldn't have dressed me up like a white character on TV. So as we continue to go through these, just kind of look at race. And I don't know if people agree with that, but I know that nowadays I think people are trying to see things very differently in terms of race and try to encourage somewhat of a color blindness, which has very different effects and suggests very different issues. But here I was at the age of 4, dressed up as Mork. But lucky for me, I was soon to be adopted. And this is, I find it very interesting. I think my parents, I believe, here are with us. But I think this was really the agreement. This was it. You signed this and you're adopting a child. So this happened in November, so this month, many years ago, back in 1981. And so I became adopted. And I was going to go live with them. I do have a picture from my first or second day after being adopted. I seem to be pretty happy. But this is my father. I assume my mom's taking the picture. My dad, and then my mother's father there, and then my sister, Melissa. And here we are there holding hands, and it seems like a smooth transition to me, I guess. Looked at a little bit, of my life growing up so far to this time. I'll read this here. because it has to do a lot with how people identify with themselves with race, how kids color themselves. I'll read this, but the surrounding world is heavily filled with images where beauty is communicated as mostly white ideal, as a mostly white ideal. Really, how should they illustrate how they feel on the inside? It's an often undetectable but present conflict for young kids of color. Either draw yourself with ethnic features and admit to belonging to a group of others, or draw yourself as with Caucasian features in order to more closely align with the so-called image of beauty. So I found a drawing of myself from a long time ago, and I don't know if you all agree with me, but here I see myself drawing myself with what I considered, I think, white hair. I feel like I kind of look like a woman, to be quite honest, but that's not an issue. But I clearly don't have dark brown hair, which I used to have. You may not be able to tell that now, but this is the hair that I drew myself with. And if you look here, you can see that it makes perfect sense. This is the hair that I grew up with. Very different hair than most people who are considered Black in this country. So that's the depiction that I self-identified with. Here's another drawing where now I have dark hair, but I drew myself as a typical color that a lot of people may color a white child. You know, a lot of times, I mean, there's a lot of different variations of color, but this is the color that I chose. So, you know, I grew up really essentially, you know, having a life where I essentially straddled the line between white and Black. On the one hand, you know, I had the white side, the affluent side. That really was the side that, you know, one of the sides that I connected with. I was in Boy Scouts. I played the piano. I was in 4-H. My father, as you see, had a plane. He took me out flying. I was in honors classes. We went to Disney. We did lots of outdoor sports and activities, things that really, especially at the time, were not considered ones that you would do as a Black child. That's not what you did. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with those activities, but it essentially, it shaped, you know, how I was going to interact with the world. And again, those are wonderful experiences and activities, but it essentially, in many different ways, put me on one side of the line, on the white side. And so when people looked at me and interacted with me, I didn't understand why, especially a lot of Black people would reject me, because they didn't see me as being part of them. I wasn't them. They couldn't connect with me. They couldn't share in my experiences. It just wasn't part of their reality. But I still did have, you know, Black influences. I had Black friends. You know, I spent a lot of time in my neighborhood, mostly playing basketball, and spending time with the neighborhood crew, many of whom were Black. Most of the boys that I interacted with were Black, and we had a good time. So I went through, this is one of my friends. I'm curious if my parents remember Stephen. Stephen was one of my good friends. We spent a lot of time together. We played basketball virtually every day together. Stephen had 3 brothers and 2 sisters. And in many ways, you know, Stephen was, I saw Stephen as a friend, but I also knew that Stephen wasn't a great influence. But that was kind of my challenge growing up, was if I wanted to spend time with people who were of color, unfortunately, it meant that I was going to be spending time with people who really were not going to be the best influence on me. So this is Stephen, and this is, I believe, my seventh grade photo. And you can see I wrote there at the top of this yearbook photo with Stephen, doing silly things that we do back in the day. But this is Stephen then, and this is Stephen today. So Stephen is incarcerated. He has a current sentence of 10 years. It's hard for me. This was my good friend. We play basketball literally every single day together. And this is what I found, on Stephen. This is what Stephen was locked up for. Numerous charges. That doesn't surprise me. It's sad. It's, this was my friend. My other friend was Charles. This was one of my other really good friends. Charles actually, my father gave him a bike and to have him work it off. My father saw something in Charles that he could be. We know that children in the Baha'i faith have a lot of potential, and I know that my father saw that in Charles. And Charles was a very intelligent person, but Charles also found himself as a felon with various charges. This was another one of my not so close friends. You can see he wrote something on my yearbook, Ugly Corey. You can wonder what somebody with that type of self-esteem, where they're going in life. And so Corey wound up finding himself incarcerated as well. And for lots of very challenging crimes. This is someone else who I wouldn't say I was very close friends with, but I had a lot of run-ins with. This was, when I was younger. Again, I've explained that I've never really, when I grew up, I couldn't be in either group. I couldn't be white. My skin color just wouldn't allow it. So it was obvious that I wasn't black, that I wasn't white, but I couldn't be black because really the activities that I do, the people that I hung out with, my family, every single thing about me, other than my skin color, was white. And Johnny had an issue with that. And Johnny decided to one day just haul off and hit me in front of all my friends just because of my inability to fit in. Johnny was a very dangerous person, but Johnny wound up being incarcerated as well. So these are the people that I grew up with. These are, this is what my understanding of being black was. And while it wasn't inherently what it meant to be black, it was in reality what it meant to be black growing up in the state of Tennessee. That's what it was. I don't think it's just a coincidence that the people that I spent time with, when I looked them up, this is their reality. I think this is a reality of many black, mostly males, growing up in Tennessee. So, it's no wonder that, with that type of backdrop, you have, when I was in 11th grade, my high school guidance counselor, told me, Mr. Schaffner told me that I wouldn't be able to score high enough on the SAT to get in to Vanderbilt, a school that I was so interested in going to. And he was essentially, I had very little contact with him other than just brief moments. But he looked at me and probably looked at the other children that he knew had come before me and made a decision. So of course, what did I do in the face of this? I do like adversity. So that summer I actually attended an engineering program at Vanderbilt. And then I decided that, this is one of those moments in my life where I knew that the current course that I was on, which it wasn't the course of that you saw my friends on, but it was just the association with them and realizing that that type of association wasn't going to be beneficial for me. So I decided uh, to transfer high schools. And I took a minority scholarship and went to a private high school for my last year in high school. That year, I had my senior term paper, and I titled it "A Coon Honky and a Honky Hood." This, if you know those terms, the definitions of those, um, you'd realize that I saw myself as a coon and a honky are both really less than positive depictions of Black and white people. So I saw myself as a person of Black and white color, but I saw the negative stereotypes of that, and I saw that people saw me in this white family, and saw that um, really that this was not a good place for me. And so that this was a very challenging time being in high school when everybody else is really forming identity, and I still had really no real identity. Again, I don't think it had anything to do with my surroundings. I think it had to do with me and my understanding that race didn't matter. And I think that in theory, it doesn't matter. But in the world that we live in, when people are going to put you in a particular category, um, it does matter. And I think it has a lot to do with your mental state. So I found myself going to the private high school, graduating, and finding myself onto college like everybody else was. This picture here really shows, you can see there's only one other African American here. It started, this was very, I'd say, representative of my life for the next few years, where I was usually going to be the token Black child, the token Black kid. But so some of the forces around me, around men of color in that time period, whether or not you identified with being Black or African American or not, are with police arrest rates in Tennessee. The population of African Americans is 16%, but a much higher arrest rate, 29%. So almost 30% of arrests in Tennessee are African American. So these disparities with how people were treated due to their race for a variety of reasons, but they were not on par with where they should be. You can see some of the incarceration rates, with Blacks. So here, Blacks form 16, 17% of the population, yet the incarceration rates are 44%, almost the same incarceration rates of whites, but they have almost 3/4 of the population. So while many of my friends were forming these statistics, my parents, their belief in me, and really they're pushing me to be a better Baha'i, I think really allowed me to see another path, another reality for myself. And it reminded me of the quote that we all have heard, but it is, "Ye are better known to the inmates of the kingdom on high than ye are known to your own selves." And that type of thinking is something that has really stuck with me since I was in my early 20s. Like, there has to be something better for me, and I need to make sure that I am doing my best to being open to those possibilities. So I share this slide here. I'm fortunate enough to, although I am a person of color, to have not had the reality that many of the people that we see in the news these days, they have. I've never been arrested. I've never been shot at or injured by police. But these moments have shown that that was a possibility. And I think it's sometimes easy to believe that, well, that's not me, that's somebody else. But these were all possibilities, such that, I put the major times that I've been pulled over by police here. This is not all of them. And I will be honest and say that that stretch of 95 to 99 there, a lot of those were things that I was speeding and I should be pulled over for. But a lot of them were things where my race really drove the violation and the result. In 2003, I was accused of stealing gas from a gas station, which was not true, and I was threatened, to be arrested. A lot of different issues I've had, but I've always been fortunate enough, one, to know really how to conduct myself in those moments, and probably luck has probably helped out as well. I can say that in recent years, I and my wife have agreed that her being white and sometimes being there has helped de-escalate situations, just the presence of her. So a few of these moments, I think they're the last one there in 2012, I was threatened to be arrested if we didn't turn our TV down. But when she came around the corner, she could see a noticeable change in the police officer's demeanor towards me. I won't get into all these, but the point is that I unfortunately have felt that a lot of these violations, alleged violations that quite frankly were not true, they could have been my reality. And too often times they relate to my race. So one thing I did want to share, something that I found very interesting over the years was, like I said, I don't feel like I was never able to be boxed into a particular category. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but I found myself listening to different music and finding value in different cultures. Whereas I think most people usually have, in my experience, have really found themselves with one type of music or one type of music or movie genre, or you can really pigeonhole them into something. And these are my two favorite artists, Billy Joel and Tupac. Probably could be further different from one another. I want to play just a couple little songs here for you all, and I think that you'll see the difference. And again, a lot of the music for me, especially with Tupac, Tupac was very instrumental for me because it was somebody that I think I felt like understood the challenges that I was going through, and I could find value in the music, in, quite frankly, a lot of the anger and a lot of the issues of race that that I was feeling. And but I also then had other loves in Billy Joel. So I'll play just this for a quick second here. So then I had, on the flip side, I had a love of Tupac. And this song, Me Against the World, unfortunately, it's how I felt in many different ways. Like, I think oftentimes, a lot of times growing up as a Black man in America, you do feel like it's you against the world. And I'll play just a bit of this song. And then I'll move it to the last song here. Again, a song that I think, I identified with really a lot of times the feeling and the emotion behind it. So it wasn't always the lyrics. So very different musics, but that really has been my reality in many different ways, not just with music. Like I said, it's with movies, with activities, whatever it is, it's usually that I can identify with two different realities, two different sides. And I've always prided myself on that. And I think that it's been great to be able to not always, be pigeonholed into a particular, you know, action or activity, um, but also that's created challenges as well. So, after being in college for a couple of years, I um, took time to serve at the Baha'i World Center. Um, I will say that there's two things that my mother um, encouraged. I think in the time I would have called it nagging, but she encouraged me to do two different things over my life that I think were probably, one of the two best experiences of my adolescent and younger years. And one of those was to apply to serve at the Baha'i World Center. So in 1999, I went to serve there. Um, I will say that this was the first time in my life that I felt like race didn't truly matter. Now, don't forget, at that time I believed that race didn't matter. So I was essentially very comforted by this fact. So you had a lot of different youth there. Um, but again, something kind of always stood out. And again, I was that token guy. If you can see me there, I'm at the top of the steps there. But I was the only African American there. There are Africans at the World Center, but I was the only African American male or female that was serving there as a youth. So again, it was hard because I didn't see somebody that I could identify with and whatnot. So again, I just kind of, I don't want to say I got lost. I didn't lose myself, but I certainly didn't have an identity that was rooted in a particular race. That's not what happened. So the next thing that I was encouraged to do, and really it happened, I think, as a direct result of being at the World Center, was to go to the Black Men's Gathering, to be part of it. So what was great about the Black Men's Gathering was that it was the first time where I actually saw Black men in large numbers and behaving in ways that didn't fit the typical definition of being Black. So looking at my, elementary and middle school age friends, but they were positive. These were they were a positive force. It was the first time for me when I saw, when I was part of a group that acknowledged that race did matter, but no matter who I was accepted. And you could even see there, I mean, we all considered ourselves Black, and it was true. And it was a very wonderful opportunity to engage with with young men and be able to see something in you that that you could see as positive. And so your color didn't have to be an issue. It didn't have to be a liability. And for me, really at this point is when my color stopped being a liability for me. And I started just seeing myself as Black, and that was okay. So after the Black Men's Gathering, I'll kind of speed up here. I decided it was time to find my birth parents. And my mother had always encouraged me over the years to find my birth parents if I wanted to. But I didn't know too much about them. And but this is what I knew. I knew that my place of birth was New Orleans, and I knew their first names. That was it. So the search began, and for years on and off, I had some interest in learning about them. I don't know if anybody is adopted that's out there today, but being adopted, not seeing, I didn't have really any pictures of my birth parents at this time, but not seeing somebody who looks like you and where you can identify and say, this is where I came from. I think that was also very challenging for identity purposes for me. Of course, I knew I was born, but it was one of those things that if you could see them and you knew they existed, it kind of proves your existence and your worth and essentially your self-worth. So I found myself having to try to figure out my own self-worth without very, I think, natural, automatic ways. Usually we just see our parents and we move on. But for me, I think I had to find them. And that was a challenge in itself, but I did find them. So my birth parents, as I said, they were married. And I figured, you know what, if my birth parents were married and they had all those issues, they probably got divorced. So I decided to look up the divorce records. And luckily for me, in I think it was 2004, I believe this was 2004, I believe, 3 states published their divorce records, and Florida was one of them, which is where I was given up for adoption. And so by typing in the words Willie and Risa, I found the divorce record there. When you look at this, you're thinking like, well, is this real? Is this me? I'm not sure. But for me, I thought it was really interesting because you see the marriage date there. My parents were born on my birthday 3 years prior. I'm sorry, they were married on my birthday 3 years prior. So when I saw that, I thought 10/15/74, wow. That was confirming to me. And through further research, I figured out that this was in fact them. The biggest key there was the last name, because I did not know the last name. But so now that you find the details, now comes the fun time, we'll see. But I ended up I met my birth father's family first. When I did this research, my birth father actually had already passed away. So I never got a chance to reconnect with him. But I did reconnect with my birth mother there, who's to my right in the picture. So you see my younger sister, Leon, on the left, then my birth mother, Risa, myself, my dad. The woman to his left is my younger sister, Liana's birth mother. And then you see my mom there, and she is, so we have essentially a little sort of family reunion. This is in, I think, December of 2007. I've shared this with my parents, both Rosalie and David, that this was perhaps one of the most awkward moments of my life, being here, not because of the potential oddness with your birth, mothers and then an adopted mother. It was more because of the reality that what what I could have been, who I could have been had I not been adopted. You know, my birth mother had 4 sons, including me. 2 were adopted. One was incarcerated, and one died. So it didn't set out for a very good start. And so I think I owe my life to my parents having, taken that courageous step to adopt myself and also my younger sister there. So we had that sort of family reunion, and it was this was the last time that I would have seen my mother. She passed away maybe a couple of years later. Um, but I also was able to reconnect with my birth father's side of the family. And here you can see this is my half brother. He is my father's son. And I don't know if you all agree, but I think that there's a lot of similarities there between the two of us. And so, uh, this was in 2014, and it had been 34 years since we had seen each other. But it was in many ways like picking up, like where we left off. And I always found it very interesting. I asked him who his favorite musical artist was, and he said Tupac. And so I felt like we were definitely brothers. But you can see my daughter Zoe there. So I have put together a little slide here that talks about some of the demographics. These are all the places that I've lived over my life, and this is essentially kind of ties all what I've been sharing here today. Essentially, I've found that I've really never fit in for a variety of reasons. I think initially it was because, one, I was adopted. 2, I was adopted into a family that was not the same race as me. 3, being biracial in Tennessee was odd enough in itself. And then 4, I essentially said I'm not going to identify with any of these particular races that people are laying down that I should be part of. Then throughout time, you can see that how the different demographics of where I lived didn't help me either. So most of my life my younger life was spent in Tennessee, where there was a fairly relatively high number of people of African descent, 16%. But my challenge was I couldn't identify with the experience that they had. I remember going to the Black Men's Gathering and feeling that I now can enjoy being around Black people because I could finally just relax and accept the experience of what it means to be Black. Because in so many different ways growing up, Black it's not something I want to be part of. Being part of, growing up a little bit in Ohio as well. Again, there was a fair number of Black people there, but I didn't fit in, for a variety of reasons. I won't get into it, but being in Mali, West Africa, I certainly did not fit in. None of us fit in there. We were all considered white, and that's who we were. We were white. So it was the first time in my life that I was called white based on my skin color, which was very interesting in itself. And being in Israel also, you can imagine that there were not many African Americans there. Maine and Australia were very challenging in terms of trying to see others in you. And unfortunately, when people see you, they saw you as that token African American, which made it very challenging. Especially, you can see the percentage of African Americans in Australia was 0.02%, virtually nobody. Maybe that was me. But Washington, D.C. for me was always that place where, I could be there, and it didn't have to mean, my skin color didn't carry with it such, I think, a racial connotation that when I was here, that people immediately judged me in a very negative way. It didn't happen. So I found myself gravitating towards DC, especially when I moved back to DC. But for a variety of reasons, my wife, we moved our family out to Virginia a few years ago. partially from at least from my standpoint, you know, there were some challenges with DC, though it wasn't all perfect. A lot of people in DC are, um, you know, I would say that most of the homeless people are Black. And when I was when we're starting to raise a young child, I didn't want them to look at people who are homeless and connect that immediately to someone who is Black. And I thought that was very, you know, I felt like that was a huge issue. It's something that, you know, I felt like I grew up with and had to battle that constantly. So when you see Black, you see negative. And I didn't want to have my children have to have that elevated, you know, radar on all the time, because quite frankly, it's exhausting to have to try to see the good when all you see is the bad. So moving out to Springfield, Virginia, has made things easier in that you know, context, but of course there's still, you know, challenges. So now, you know, this is my family now. You know, my immediate family, extended family, and you can see that, you know, in many ways I'm still part of a biracial, interracial family unit. I think that the challenge now is, you know, how do, especially with all of what's going on in the news nowadays with regards to race, it's, you know, how do I fit into that? How do I fit into that with my children, my family, my wife? You know, how do we navigate all the landmines with regards to race? How do we raise our children? You know, how is race going to fit into their lives? I'm cautious because I don't want to believe that my children are going to have the same issues and have the same experiences as I had. Clearly they will not. My son is a lot lighter in skin color than I am, and also my daughter. But he is going to likely be seen by others as you're something different here about you. You know, especially his hair. You know, I had really curly hair when I was younger. You still can't tell that now, but these are some of the challenges that I know that I'm going to face, my wife and I, and you know, wanting to, you know, give my children the best shot they have at having an identity, not knowing what that identity will be, but, you know, wanting them to have the best identity of, you know, who they are, who they can be. I do think there's value in not getting too hung up in a particular group, but also I think wanting them to not go through the same struggles as me by just pretending that there are no races out there, which is not what I did, but essentially rejecting any form of belonging to a certain group. I think that in theory that works, but we don't live in that theoretical world. So anyway, I will stop sharing my screen here. I don't know if we have time, but if we do, perhaps there's, if we want to engage in any dialogue or any questions that anybody might have.
I think we have plenty of time for questions. So if you want to raise your hand in the participant box or type your question in the chat box. If you wave your hand around, I might not see you, but we can try that too. So would anyone like to start off with the questions?
I see there's Emmanuel and Mitchell.
Okay. Yeah, Emmanuel, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your personal story. It's very emotional and very, very interesting. And I have a question. I mean, I understand that probably your story, similar stories can be applicable to pretty much any minority in different environments. And my question would be what you would suggest or recommend for, I mean, anybody who is in the situation of being a minority in any particular environment. How for those persons to deal with the fact that they are discriminated or feel uncomfortable in their environment where they live in. What would be your suggestion for those people to deal with that that fact that, I mean, they feel uncomfortable within the environment they live in? Thank you.
So I mean, I think it's a really important question. You know, I feel like I was able to navigate that in a very effective way, only because I think that my rejection of you know, being a particular race, I think that allowed me to just kind of bulldoze through, for lack of better words, life, just feeling like, well, it doesn't matter, you know, whether or not you know, someone treats me a certain way or not. I you know, I did feel those effects, but I always felt like that was a challenge, an obstacle that I was meant to overcome. So I feel like that was in many ways not my issue. Especially, I think that, you know, when you do feel the vulnerabilities of being part of a group, you know, when we identify with something and then somebody tells us that that identity is problematic, you know, I think it's going to be a challenge. I mean, I know that, you know, most of us are Baha'is here, and we know that you know, we have the teachings really on the oneness of mankind, and on understanding that we are all working towards a particular goal with regards to, you know, race unity and equality. I think putting that in the forefront of one's mind is important, and I think would probably be very helpful to navigate those issues.
I cannot start my video, but I was just going to say something. Can I make a remark?
Sure.
Thank you. Hi, Frederick. Such a beautiful presentation. I was going to say, you know, looking at everything you said and some of your childhood friends, it made me think of some of the leaders. Sometimes we hear say that, you know, it's all in your genes. It's all in your genes. And I mean, it is so much in terms of your environment and your you know, your role models, your upbringing, your children. So, you know, comparing you, who I think in every sense is a beautiful rose, and your friends incarcerated, that seems to me so it becomes so evident that, you know, that's really the case. Thank you, Frederick. It was so nice. Enjoyed looking at it and listening to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I think Mitchell had his hand up next. Mitch, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. First, I want to echo Emmanuel and thank you for a very powerful and thought-provoking presentation. And before I ask my question, I need to tell you that you ruined me. And the reason you ruined me is I can't listen to a Billy Joel song without thinking about your music presentation at the Baha'i Center and looking for the day when we could have you back for an encore. So my question has to do with, from your relatively unique upbringing and perspective, do you have any thoughts on, as we try to engage constructively in, for lack of a better word, racial equity movements within our society, things we need to be cautious about, potential minefields, things that could make us come across offensive or arrogant, or anything that would help us be more constructive as we try to be a part of making the change that's needed in our society. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for the question. I feel like that's that answer is the answer. That's, if we can get that answer, it's we'll be a lot further than we are today. What I would say, two things kind of came to my mind. One of those is I'm sure you've all heard about it, and some of you have read the book White Fragility. I think it is an outstanding book, and I really believe that if honestly, I feel like it is almost a Bible to race relations these days. And if you're not reading it, I feel like you're probably doing yourself a disservice, because it is just so eye-opening, I think, for almost everybody. I mean, there's different elements that no matter who you are, you pick up different things from that book. And I'm in a book club with a men's group, and it's really great. And so I feel like that is something that I think allows you to open yourself up to the race conversation that is having, that we're having nowadays. I think more so than ever, at least in my memory, my lifetime. And it's definitely, I'd say it's a much more, I think, open conversation about race instead of, I think it's different than what occurred in the 60s. But I think that's a great book, because it really, I think, if you're not open, she'll let you know, the author lets you know that you're not open to the changes and the learnings that she attempts to take you down. And it's kind of like one of those, flowchart books, like, if you can't answer this, then you need to go back to this, and so I think it's a very instructive book. But the second thing that I wanted to say was, don't stop, like literally don't stop. And I don't think that, I know nowadays, especially, I think people feel like things are so sensitive that they can't say things. And I feel like people just it's okay to be honest. And it's okay to say, well, I use that term and you have said that that's a racially offensive term. I'm sorry, that's not my intention. And I'm going to learn. So it's a learning opportunity. But I think that I've seen a lot of people nowadays are so concerned with saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, that they just become frozen. And I think that is just as equally dangerous as not moving at all, or not trying to move.
Okay, Susan has her hand up. Susan, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question
I actually don't have a question. I just
or comment?
so powerful, Frederick, and emotional. As others. I mean, I've been. It truly is very powerful, and I hope that it can be expanded. I'm so glad that you are recording it, that other people can share in this. And I imagine you're speaking in other venues as well, Frederick. But yeah, I think that this is very important for your unique situation. Is just so powerful. We can learn so much from it. And anyway, I hope you do it more and this can be shared. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to, Olivia and Lila, would you like to unmute yourself? Or whoever is, oh, okay,
So this is Rosalie Landry, Frederick's mother. And those were my two of my granddaughters that it's listed under. So
okay.
I just want to tell Frederick how proud I am of him. His father and I are very proud of him. And, I was raised in Tennessee, and the civil rights movement had a big effect on my life, and it was almost like God was leading my life. You know, I had a dream as a little girl that I would adopt an international, have children from, international children. I would adopt children. And then when I gave birth to Melissa, and then I had a miscarriage. And then one night David said to me, they were asking people to adopt these boat children from Cambodia. And he said, that's what we need to do, is adopt. And, it was like, God spoke to my heart that was our path. And it's been a privilege. And we made a lot of mistakes. And like Frederick said, the beautiful thing that's happening now is, I thought I was somewhat enlightened. I was a Baha'i. But children don't always share what's going on in their hearts with you, And Frederick was always, I could tell all these girls had crushes on, all these white girls had crushes on him because he was always so handsome. But I could tell that, he was always seeking. And I know, being a Baha'i, I'd always tried to get Black teachers for him and encourage Black friends. But I was white and we were white. And anyway, it's such a wonderful opportunity that we're having right now to grow. And I'm just thankful I'm still alive, because I thought the civil rights movement was the highlight, that really changed my life. But now I have another opportunity in my 70s to grow again through our most challenging issue of racism. And it's such a gift to be a part of this, and to, watch my son wake up to his potential too. And I just wanted to say thank you to all of you.
That was beautiful. I have tears listening to that. Do we have any other comments, questions? You can raise your hand or maybe just jump in, type something in the chat box. One has posted a link to the book of White Fragility. There's also a link to the book So You Want to Talk About Race. These books are also available from the public library if, like me, you're tight with $1. Do we have any other questions or comment? Anybody?
Yeah, Ismail.
Oh, Ismail.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to thank your mom, Frederick. She's a blessing to humanity. She doesn't look at the color, and she looks at the soul. And we really thank her for being such a wonderful soul, because as we know, according to the Baha'i writings, in the next world, it's the soul there's no color. And one of the things, it's very emotional, and it's very difficult to give such a presentation. And if it was me, it would be difficult for me, Frederick, but you have the power and the passion. And this is what we need in this world of today. Just like a gardener who has different flowers, he needs to know the different characteristics and the different, fragrances that the flowers produce and the pollen and all that stuff, and it's true. You have to be open to talk about these issues because these are the issues that are affecting our society today, and it's helping us to move on to a better path. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, Emmanuel has his hands up. Emmanuel, would you like to unmute yourself and speak?
Frederick, I believe you had triple challenges because you are part of the Black community. You were raised in an interracial family, which is also challenging, and then you were raised as a Baha'i, which is also being raised, as a minority. So I was wondering, how did you feel being raised Baha'i, which is also being Baha'i? It's a minority among a majority, which has not the same points of view many times.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on something that I frequently, think that, for lack of better words, being a Baha'i, it was, a minority situation. It was kind of a liability. I think, especially growing up in Tennessee, I'm sure there's different places where it's less of an issue, but growing up in Tennessee, being at the Bible Belt and whatnot, it was just another reinforcement of being different. And, honestly, I think that, it's quite challenging to always be different. And usually, you're different in a couple ways, but I feel like, for me, I felt like I wasn't overwhelmed, but I felt like I could easily have been overwhelmed by the number of differences. And I think that kind of requires you to essentially be on your toes all the time and to not fall victim to that. But I also think that if you can withstand the temptation to fall victim to that, I think it can be a really positive thing, because we know what the faith gives us. We know that. Honestly, I like that I have a lot of the benefits of being white, the benefits of being Black, the benefits of being a Baha'i. There's value in that. And I think that my struggle was growing up was trying to not fall victim to the negative components of what it meant to be white or to be Black, or to be like, well, this is some weird religion, I'm going to reject it. This is a waste of my time. I'm just going to be like everybody else. So I think that was an issue that I had more so growing up. I do feel like I came out on the other side. I won't say unscathed, but I feel like I came out. And I think that if people do that, essentially embrace that. We're trying to embrace, we talk about unity and diversity. I think we're also talking about the benefits of the differences. I think it's okay. But growing up in school, you don't want to be different. You want to fit right in. And I think that if we all, and when we teach our children's children, how to embrace differences and be okay with that, I think that, that's really where we need to put our efforts.
We have a question in the chat box. Can you share more of your experiences at the Black Men's Gathering and what effects it had on the whole group? And did you write a book about it?
I did write a book about it. So I will say that, we, myself and Richard Thomas and Harvey McMurray did write a small book at the 25th anniversary of the Black Men's Gathering. we're in the process of writing a second book that's going to be real. It's going to be all about transformation, which to me, that is what the Black Men's Gathering was all about. The transformative power of Baha'u'llah. The gathering, as you all may or may not know, came about in 1987. It was an initiative of Billy Roberts, who was then I believe a counselor at the time, or an auxiliary board member, I believe. Yes, he was an auxiliary board member. And he saw essentially what I grew up with, the challenge of being Black and being a male in America, and decided to do something about it. So let's all gather together and let's just talk. And so 12 people back in 1987 gathered together in Greensboro, North Carolina, and the gathering evolved, developed since for 25 years. And you know, it has been formally concluded, but the gathering has, you know, for me, it was a saving grace, really, to find friends, to find people that looked like me, and I could point to, and like I said earlier, you know, being Black then was kind of a good thing. I didn't have to attach the word Blackness to what I saw all around me. There was a different version of being Black, and it was so amazing. So being at the Black Men's Gathering, I think that was another question, like, what was it all about? I mean, I'd say the most important thing that we did there was we prayed. We prayed and we prayed and we prayed, and you know, we pray for hours. I mean, it's a little exhausting, I won't lie, but praying for 2.5 hours, but you have breakfast, and then you start some drumming and praying, and the next thing you do, you're having your next meal. I'd never experienced anything like that. So learning how to pray, learning how to consult, you know, learning how to really be responsive to the messages of the House of Justice. Really that dedication and that willingness to serve and to really follow the guidance. That's really what I think the Black Men's Gathering, one of the components of the Black Men's Gathering was following the guidance, being responsible to the institutions. And when they said, you know, people should go pioneering, members of the Black Men's Gathering did that. Travel teaching, that's what the gathering was all about. You know, taking part in core curriculum in Ruhi, the gathering, we tried to do that, tried to facilitate that. Now we're all doing Ruhi. Okay, well, now we're going to do that. And, you know, really, I think trying to obedience to the institutions was very important. And I feel like I have a challenge when people ask about the Black Men's Gathering, because it just gets me going. and you know, I will say this, you know, my dad's not there, but you know, one of the things that I used to always I knew I would never get to do it was my dad would never get to go to the Black Men's Gathering with me. So it was always this thing that I always was regretful for, that that couldn't happen, because I saw so many, you know, fathers and sons being able to go to the gathering together and connect and whatnot. And you know, it's wonderful to be able to share, you know, what the gathering was, because it was transformative. And you know, I feel like it was for me, and I feel like, you know, so many people that attended the gathering, they saw transformation in themselves and also in their communities as well, and their families.
Hey, thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. Looking at the chat box, I think everyone enjoyed it. Got a lot out of it. It's almost noon, so it's time for our closing prayer. If Mr. Landry is willing, after the closing prayer, we do sometimes keep the meeting open if people would like to talk, but that of course is up to you. So right now our speaker next week is going to be Eileen Carpenter. So please join us for that next Sunday at 10:30. And now we will conclude with a closing prayer.
Oh God, guide me, protect me, make of me a shining lamp and a brilliant star. Oh God, guide me, protect me, make of me a shining lamp and a brilliant star. Thou art the mighty and the powerful. Thou art the mighty and the powerful. Thou art the mighty and the powerful. Oh God, guide me, protect me, make of me a shining lamp and a brilliant star. Thou art the mighty and the powerful. Thou art the mighty and the powerful. Thou art the mighty and the powerful. Powerful.
Okay, at this time, Raina Farnsworth has also asked if she could say a short prayer for us.
I think
So,
she changed her mind. Really
oh,
want
she did? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
to? You do? Come.
Thank you. Bye. Nice. Very nice to see you. Welcome.